Watching news at Prime. Let's get into this conversation now. The Transport Minister, Barbara Creecy, says the department is targeting a 50% reduction in road deaths by the year 2030. Creecy was speaking at the festive season road safety launch in Hammanskraal today. The campaign aims to raise awareness on road safety and intensifying law enforcement operations on all major routes in the country. The Minister joins me now for that discussion. Minister, good evening to you and thank you very much for your time. Let's begin with the target for this festive season. Yes, I know that the all-encompassing target of 50% is by the year 2030, but for us to get there, there's got to be milestones along the way. Do you have any particular target come this festive season?
Good evening, Polly, and thank you very much for inviting me on your show. And indeed, our road death toll is much, much too high in this country, and we do need to fall in line with the United Nations overall program to cut road accidents and road deaths by 50% by 2030. I haven't actually set a target for the festive season itself as yet, because we are trying something new this year. What we have done is we have taken all the research that the Road Traffic Management Corporation has undertaken over many years on places where we see repeat major accidents. We are planning to deploy our own national traffic police to those hotspots. We're also asking all of our provinces and all of our municipalities to do a similar breakdown of where the most accidents and most fatalities occur, and to place officers on the beat to increase patrolling. And of course, we also have a campaign to try and change driver behavior, because we understand that enforcement is part of the story, but changing driver behavior and changing pedestrian behavior is a very important aspect if we are going to achieve our objectives in the longer term.
Absolutely, Minister, and that's the point I'd like to pick up on, because law enforcement visibility becomes a deterrent. When people see that there are police all the way along this route, they tend to behave. However, when there is no sight of a police officer, people tend to do as they please. I know it's a challenging question, but how do you change that driver behavior?
Well, I think, first of all, we do have to increase police visibility. And the big issue that we have been grappling with for years and years is the fiscal position we find ourselves in, and the vexed issue of overtime payments. We have decided to do what I'm calling this experiment. We know that accidents happen at night. We know that accidents happen on the weekends. And as I say, we know some of the locations where they occur. So we are trying to make police more visible as one form of deterrent. Obviously, public education in the form of advertising, but also public outreach through a range of partners. We've pulled in the Automobile Association, faith-based organizations, as well as all the social partners that our provinces and municipalities work with. There's some key issues to driver behavior. So there's obvious things like don't drink and drive, don't exceed the speed limit. But I think when we know that everybody is embarking on long journeys, planning the journey is important so that you take regular breaks. Fatigue is a big issue in long distance journeys, and fatigue can actually be as dangerous as alcohol. Another major issue which we weren't dealing with 10 years ago is the question of people texting while they drive. And even a 30-second lapse in consciousness can have terrible consequences. So trying to hammer home the message, don't text and drive. If you have to take a call, use your hands-free kit. If you have to text, pull over. Don't do it while you're driving.
There's something that was highlighted at the time that your department and the RTMC were briefing the Portfolio Committee in Parliament, and I'd like to touch on what a committee member, Mr. Mazwi Blose, was cautioning against, and that is the speed traps that are operated by officers who are hiding in bushes. And the point that he makes, and I want to quote him directly, he says, this approach no longer works because you'd see oncoming drivers flickering to warn would-be transgressors. This is a work in progress. We must confront the reality that our roads are fatally prone. We want zero deaths. Do you foresee a role for this way of monitoring traffic, Minister, that those officers that hide in bushes and just place a camera, a speed trap, in other words, is that form of policing going to continue, or you think, at least for now, up until, I guess, a new method is found, it still is viable?
Well, I don't control police operations, and I guess some municipalities and some traffic police forces would think that's an important activity. I think we know in some municipalities, traffic fines are a major source of income. From my perspective, we have a national traffic police force, and we want those police officers to be visible. We want them to be patrolling. We want them to be driving up and down, because what we understand is that police visibility, not police hiding, is a very important traffic calming measure, and also a very important warning measure to drivers. So I don't want to comment on operational orders that are given, but our 800 national traffic officers that we will be sending to these accident hotspots to reinforce local law enforcement officers, we want them to be visible so that there is this calming effect on traffic.
Yeah. Another major partner, Minister, is the taxi industry, along with the bus industry. These are stakeholders that ferry very, very big loads of the public to and from work, or in many instances, long-haul distances. What is the message to them this festive season? I think the last festive season, there was something of a very good and smooth operations between particularly the taxi industry and government.
Well, both major taxi associations were present at the launch today, and both gave messages of support, and both spoke about their own safety operations. I would really want to call on the taxi industry to do much more in terms of public education, particularly around the issue of passengers wearing seatbelts. You know, after the launch today, we actually participated in some of the enforcement operations. And I was quite disturbed to meet a whole very full taxi full of commuters. And we talked about the fact that not a single person in that vehicle was wearing seatbelts, although the vehicle was fitted with seatbelts. And when one tried to explain why this was important, it was concerning that this is something that was not uppermost on mind as a safety procedure. I think buckling up, whether you're in a bus, a taxi, or a car, even if there is a collision, your chances of surviving that collision are much, much greater if you have your seatbelt on.
Yeah. Finally, Minister, let's then get to the 2030 target of reducing these road fatalities by 50%. In less than a minute, if you can, how are we going to get there?
What we're going to do is we're going to go through this year's experiment. If it works, I think that we will then have a much more scientific basis on which to base further law enforcement. We can't just have policing and visibility on our roads during the festive season. It has to be every weekend. It has to be after hours. It has to be at night. And if we are correct in thinking that this is an important deterrent going forward, we are then going to have to sit down and find where we find this overtime money so that we can continue with operations that are after hours and at night, times of the day when we know that it is most dangerous both for pedestrians, drivers and passengers.
Barbara Creecy, Minister of Transport, thank you very much for your time talking to us on the day of the launch of what has come to be known as the Safer Festive Season campaign. All right, more news after the break.